Hello and welcome to the Creative Monitor podcast, where we interview creatives across the YouTube space to learn about themselves, their work, and how they see the future of their careers. Today's guest is 14-year Machinima veteran Alexo, known mainly for his CNP series, which will be returning for a 15th season in January 2023. We talk about a variety of topics, including his transition from Halo to Gmod Machinima, opinions on remaking old classics, and much more. I'm Camden Crawford, and thank you for joining us. Well, welcome, Alexa, to the podcast. It's awesome to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I know there was a bit of a light talking about actually having you on when I previously had the Innovative FM show, so it's nice to kind of have do a little bit of a restart with this and get you on this one that is going to be hopefully a little better in format than what we had before. But I don't know if you listened to anything in the past or anything like that, but that's kind of, I don't know, there's a
yeah, I had seen the one with Megalodon.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I was a little stiff on that one, I gotta admit. So hopefully I'm a little better of an interviewer, you know.
But the whole point of life is to strive for embetterment every day.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if it pays off. Practice makes perfect, right? And so
That's
at
true.
The beginning of the podcast, I did a little intro for you. But in your own words, can you just tell the audience who you are and what you're about and things like that?
Well, my name is Alex. Most people know me as Alexo. For about, 14 years now. I've been making movies with video games, and I wake up every day asking why I still do that, and then I do it again. So that's what we do. And I make this show called CNP. My 14-year-old brain came up with that name, and it's still the name it is. So take that how you will. And it's a show about everything and anything.
And yeah, 14 years of Machinima. That's
right.
But not just Machinima, but you're working 14 years on the same series. How has
It's like half my life now. It's insane to think, but
how do you feel about your journey with that? How CNP has evolved and how you have evolved as like a writer and a creator through that?
It's a lot of trial and error. If you watch the show, there's a lot of different eras, I like to call it, where it's like it tries to drive the story in one place, or there's like motives for characters that eventually just got dropped because it just didn't work out, or I didn't enjoy where the writing was going. So I mean, I would say that the biggest motive behind it, like still going, is just every time I put one out, I'm like, the next thing I assume is I can just make the next one better. The next one's gonna be better. And all these years later, I just keep making more, and every time I make a new one, I say to myself, this is the best one. And then it comes out, and I'm instantly like, now I gotta get the next best one. Next best one's gonna come.
And so, how did the concept of CNP kind of come to fruition? Like, more specifically, I should say, like, the stories are, because you've covered variety of topics over the time. You've talked about bullying, you've talked about like controversial subjects as far as like cannibalization of cannabis, not cannibalization. Jeez, I'm having an issue here. But
yeah, I don't know.
I don't think you've covered that one yet.
I might have forgot about that one.
Like politics, racism, suicide. So how did you bring all this, like sometimes controversial but hard topics to the screen? Are they from more personal experiences, or did you get set ideas from fans? Like, kind of tell me how that process goes.
Well, originally my whole idea behind the show, initially it came from a conversation with a friend, Sandman, back in 2008, where we just wanted to have a show where there was a guy named Coke and a guy named Pepsi. And then it just kind of developed from there. And in the first episode, actually, there was already undertones of like a racism kind of topic with how they were treating Dew in the initial episode. And just from writing perspective, I wanted to do something where by the end of the video, people would ask themselves, what does that mean? Or what was that joke supposed to be about? And just over the years of seeing the news, unfortunately, and talking to different people or being in different experiences, especially with the high school arc. When I went through that, I was actually in high school at the time. It just all kind of got to a point where I was like, I can make a video on this topic, and it can go in this direction, and the result, I hope, is people asking this question to themselves after the fact.
Do you ever look at your past CNP episodes and as somewhat of a time capsule in some cases about either where you were at that time?
Oh yeah. There's a couple of them that I won't even watch. I look at them and completely different point in my life. As they say, the chapters turn and we continue on, but going back to a certain element of a couple of them is really weird for me in a lot of sense, because you always remember, if you produce things, you always remember that time frame, like where your brain was at that point in time when you were making something. And it's difficult for some of them to go back and be like, oh, like totally different person at that time compared to now.
And it's interesting because over the 14 years, like there's been over 100 episodes of CNP at this point.
Yeah, just about 100.
I think there's like 95.
Quite a few remakes.
And so why was there remakes at that time? Were you just not enjoying the initial story? Did you want to take it to a different timeline?
I guess I just wanted to be as much like George Lucas as I could. No, to be honest, there was a couple of points where, like the pilot series, I redid those because they didn't really flow well with the way the characters became, compared to like the original like pilots from 2008 compared to the 2015 version. The personalities had completely swapped around and been defined by 2015. That watching the original ones just didn't really mesh right in terms of the character. So going back and being able to redo something like that was nice. And there was quite a few Halo Reach episodes that I wanted to redo some of the effects in, and they just so happened to be released during the time when we were with Machinima.com. And I ultimately also wanted to take out that stupid logo because it was a dumpster fire that shut down. So
right.
That was that,
And I really do want to get into the Machinima.com here a little later, and because that's a crucial part of the history of the Alexo channel. And finishing up here with CNP, I think I also want to talk about also the because you originally, as you said, did it in Halo Reach, and that was the main engine for, what was it, 10 years of the show? Like 2010 to 2020, I think was your span of that. Yeah. So what got you?
Yeah, we used Halo Reach from 2010 to 2020 and Halo 3 from 2008 to 2020. A long time.
It's insane. So like, tell me how making it in Halo Reach for those 10 years, deciding not to switch to Halo 4 or Halo 5, and then suddenly deciding in 2020, I guess not suddenly, it was 10 years, but like once you got to 2021, changing over to Gary's mod. Like, tell me, like, what was not in those Halo 4 and Halo 5, for instance, and why Gary's mod was the best outlet for you?
Yeah, so for Halo 4, it ultimately just came down to the character Do. I couldn't have him as an elite, and the obvious thing would just be change him into a Spartan or chroma key in the elite, and my production aspect at that time just really didn't involve chroma keying in a heavy aspect of just taking a whole character and redoing that in multiple projects. And I was going to do like a one-off episode with Halo 4 where it was just him as a box, like a giant, like, you can't see this character, it's censored sort of thing. And funny enough, that ended up actually being reused in just the recent series for Richard's dad. So that joke did get made after 10 years. But I did make a couple in Halo 5, and the biggest problem with Halo 5 was just getting the correct armor. I spent months trying to unlock this single helmet that I couldn't get, and I knew people that had the helmet, but I'd have to wait around for them to be available to do body acting, and so I couldn't just sit by myself and make something. And it just got to the point where it's like, if I'm going to keep going with Halo 5, I'm going to have to repeatedly go through this issue, and it's just not worth it. So, but what made me ultimately switch to Gary's mod is, I mean, 10 years. You do something for 10 years and you get to a point where it's just things got to change or they can't keep going. Like I like to describe it as if you imagine you're like a painter and you're only set to using like gray and black paint. Blah, I can't speak. Gray and black paint. So you only have 2 settings to paint with. And you're sitting there struggling. You're asking yourself, I really want to throw some orange on there, or some reds, or some blues, and you finally just reach a point where you can't paint with the same kind of paint anymore. You got to go with something new, something fresh. And I found myself running into a lot of issues with the plot and just the characters standing around and talking, and then there's a zoom in on this character's face to imply something funny was said, and it's just the same setup over and over, and I couldn't give them like objects to hold unless it was like a PNG image put over the character and you don't even see their arms, or just a lot of different things that I realized that it was starting to get to the point where I was only making it just to make it. I wasn't really making it to get like an excitement or a thrill out of it or an accomplishment or anything like that. I was just getting really sick of it, so I had to switch it up. We went to Gary's Mod, and on top of Gary's Mod just having more options to make stuff, it's actually a lot faster to make stuff too. So instead of spending like 3 weeks to make a video, it takes me like 12 hours. So it's great.
And so what is the reason behind that? Because I remember hearing in your 14th anniversary stream that Halo Reach would take sometimes up to 61 days to make an episode, where you could possibly make an episode in Gary's Mod like at a max 21 days. And as you said, averagely at 12 hours. So is there...
Yeah, it just...
Like, what? No, I was just like, what is the huge difference? Because as someone who just uses Halo myself, what is the kind of like the... not the skill gap, but like what makes Gary's Mod a lot easier?
Well, my whole thing with it is complexity. So, for example, if you're going to have like 3 guys standing and talking with each other, if you're going to do that by yourself in Halo, you got to load up Halo. You got to have all 3 controllers. You got to get in the custom games lobby, load up the game, get rid of all their weapons if you don't have the weaponless game type, set up, film the parts you want, end the game, go to theater, load up theater, disconnect the controllers, get into the theater mode, sit through the film and get to the point where you're actually doing that. And so like if it takes you like 10 minutes to set up all those guys, it's going to take you 5 minutes to scrub through the footage to get to where you're like actually doing the body acting session. And I did all the math for that and everything, and I was just wasting an incredible amount of time of just, okay, I need 3 guys, so we'll get the 3 guys on 3 controllers, and oh no, I didn't get the specific shot that I need. Now I gotta load up all 3 controllers again and go back in, and just wasting so much time. And the whole thing with Gary's Mod is I can set it up to where you can set up an entire scene and then save that shot. And if you come back later, like, oh no, I need this shot again, you just click the button and it loads up everything you had before. So it's just instantaneous to get back into doing filming, and a lot more options with the actual character customization too. And so for a lot of the shots in Gary's Mod, like I'll film it all in engine and have it set up to where like the 2 characters will be on one side of the screen and the other, and I'll do like both body acting for each and cut it in to where it just looks like they're both in the same game, but it's actually just me, like as a single character. So there's a lot of different methods for like chroma keying and stuff too, to like if 2 characters have to interact with each other or anything like that, then that's usually done with chroma keying effects. And so it's just become like a really open-ended way of just being able to, okay, I'm done working for the night, and I can just go to bed and get up and then come right back in here and click one button and it's all back and ready to go again, instead of load up the Xbox, plug in all the controllers, get ready again. And
it's a grueling process.
Like after doing that for 10 years and then going to a different process, I just realized like, wow, I kind of wish I would have done this literally like 5 or 6 years ago, to be honest.
So with that information, with doing Halo for, I mean, more than 10 years, because you did it in Halo 3, do you see yourself, if Halo Infinite gets a good forge, gets custom games, and gets like kind of the elements you need, and just like realistic, like not realistically, but like unrealistically saying that they somehow put elites in there, would that be an engine you'd want to use, or do you find that it's now like too time consuming that it's almost not worth it?
Oh no, I'd never go back to
You
Halo.
never would.
No. Well, correction. I've already said that I'll make like 1 or 2 more, like with CMP, just as a 15th anniversary next year, prime example. I'm probably gonna end up making one for next year, just as like a hey, remember this? But it can never be like my mainstay again. It takes way too long.
And so, where do you hope the channel of Alexo goes from here? As CMP is your main, it's the main project that has pushed your channel. And are you going to keep doing CNP until you're done with your channel? Do you envision a stopping point for that series and maybe starting something new, or is there just always another thing, as we talked about, for CNP to get better and better and better, and you're just going to keep going at that?
Probably the third option, because we're actually in the swing of production right now for next year, 2023. I've got the goal is 20, but I'll take 40 if I can get it. The production it's at a scale right now. As I said before, it's so much faster to make them, and the ideas are overflowing over the years. This last season we just put out, I had 6 of them that had just sat around like in what I call the vault of them, and I'm trying to make all the ones that I've had planned, and I'm trying to make new ones that could be the next best, so to speak. But there's no intention to end the show anytime, unless they straight up show up at my door with a lawyer and say I can't make it anymore. So,
and so when making all of your
I've
go for it. I want to hear what you're saying.
I was gonna say, like, I literally have it set to like right now where like if I died tomorrow, there's actually episodes set up to like go out.
That's hilarious.
There's a dead switch sort of set of episodes. So
even when you're dead, you're just gonna keep
nobody
posting.
Has to worry about. Yeah, like even if I'm dead, there's still gonna be like people are gonna be like, what? This dead guy just uploaded? What? Like, oh no.
Feel like you could make a CNP episode. If you're listening to this, I'm dead. That's okay. I still got 6 months of uploads.
It doesn't get that creepy. I can tell you that much.
Well, I'm glad. I hope you stick around for a long time before you have to upload the backlog. But
we're going for 60 years. CMP 60 years.
60th anniversary.
Buy the DVD when it's legally available in 40 years.
Oh man! And so when you're writing your scripts, I have a few people that you don't just use a standard of script writing. You kind of incorporate retro scripting in a bit. Is that true? And
yeah, that's absolutely
so. Can you explain
true.
kind of how that process goes into retro scripting versus just having everything laid out in a script when writing a CNP episode?
So the real benefit to it is actually the machinima itself, like the tools for that. If you were making something like animation, which I've done in the past, you can't do retro scripting nearly as well for that kind of medium. When we did the CMP cartoon back in 2012, we actually had a whole script written out and like storyboards and everything, and that was just like a time-consuming process. But when it comes to actually just making the show like today in the standard format, it's basically, it starts with just a line. So, prime example, we did this episode, Deserted. It was the first episode of this year. It came out on January 1st, actually. And that episode took 9 hours to make. We had the idea where it's just, they're in a desert. They're deserted. And when you make something for so long with like the same characters, you get an idea of what they would do in certain situations. So they're out in the desert. Oh, Peter, he's yearning for alcohol. Yeah, so he's probably going to say like, oh, we're going to die. And so like maybe the dialogue starts off with him, and depending on who you're brainstorming with to get like the idea of like point A, point B, point C, the idea can come out in a lot of different ways. And so the audio ultimately is just kind of like a playground of, okay, so we have point A, point B, and point C, but how do they get there? Oh, well, maybe this character does this, or that character can do that, and eventually it comes out of left field in terms of what actually ends up being funny for a plot. I've found that instead of writing line by line, you can get a lot funnier result if you just go with what's funny in the moment. There's a lot of episodes in the past where I look back and some of them aren't as funny to me as they were at the moment when I made them, but a lot of people still enjoy the jokes and say like, "Oh, that's the funniest part you ever did," or "the greatest video you ever made," and it's just really funny to think that you don't really write anything for it except for bullet points. There's no word for word kind of dialogue, and I think that's just the biggest benefit of it too, because like I said, it's the show about anything, so not having anything written can ultimately lead it to any direction.
So how do you look at your, like you mentioned, like some people say like, oh, this is the funniest part of your project, or this is your best episode that you've done forever. How do you look at those, especially when you're making the next episode and you're like, this is, for you personally, that's the best one you've done, because you're always improving, always trying to make a better product. So how do you take it when people say like, this is an episode that I did 5 years ago, oh, this is the best script writing you've ever done?
Yeah, it's not like, I don't take it as like a critique or like a put down
Right.
or anything. A lot of people stand by that Nancat episode, like that's the best one you ever made, or the Halloween episode. I get a lot of people that say that that's one of the better ones I made, and I always look at them as, I mean, they're timeless kind of episodes if people are saying that, but I don't try to let it like get me upset or like, oh, I make way better stuff now, you should watch this. Like that's never been like my
Right.
motive. But I do like to take people's like opinions though. If I ever meet like new people, I'll ask them like, oh, what's your favorite episode? Because I'm always curious. Like a lot of people say different episodes, some that I don't even watch, and then I'm just like, oh, why that one? Like I get really curious.
Yeah, it's kind of I've always found with the creative process personally that I'm always just in a mindset that I hate the stuff I did before, and I always get myself trapped into that mindset. Like I'm working on a project now that I'm finishing up from last year, and it's, if someone ever said that this was a great project, I wouldn't become friends with them anymore, because I just don't enjoy it, because it was like something that it's a time capsule of my past, and I'm trying to finish it up where I've become a lot better, say as like a script writer or filming. And so it's always interesting to hear other people's perspective, especially with a series that comes from working on it for 14 years, how that would act creatively. Have you ever tried to replicate something in the past and try it? Like, I know you've rebooted different parts that you've done, but have you ever like looked at an episode and been like, I would really like to redo that with a modern twist, and based on like wanting to make it look better or wanting to have a different joke or a different aspect? Or do you think you're just like, I did that in the past, I want to move on?
Yeah, like I've had that thought. And the thing is with every creative too, like if they go back through, especially after 14 years, if they go back through a portfolio and see something, and like there's aspects of it that they do enjoy, but they feel like they can do it better. That's always a thing that I've run into in a couple of different instances. But I mean, when something's done, it's done. You know, it's really hard to go back and for people to look at it again, especially after quite a while. And there's actually a part of me right now that's debating on doing this, ironically, where it's like, do I go back and redo these and put them out? Because last year, in 2021, I'd actually did a redux of the Nancat episode, which people were not expecting. But when I actually did that, my whole goal was to just show people, hey, I'm doing Gary's Mod now, and it just seems right after 10 years to do this video again in Gary's Mod, and then banned the episode. Banned, as in like they joined a band and all that wacky hijinks. That one got remade too, along with the second part added in. And I was actually reaching a point in the production where I was finally working on the second band episode and making it in Gary's Mod, and I just decided it'd be better to just redo part one and then put them both together. and so that's why that ended up happening the way it did too. But yeah, I'd say it's really difficult for like a motive after so long if you don't have the correct mindset for something. There's a quote by Neil Peart where you can't look at somebody who's who you respect, or like a musician who you think is better than you. You shouldn't like look at this musician who you think is better than you and get mad about it. You should always strive to practice more or be the best version that you can be of yourself. You should always try to wake up every day and embetter yourself, as I said at the beginning. That's always the goal, especially with making something for so long. If there's some parts that I do look back on fondly, it might be something to incorporate once again in some small way, but I don't really think that going back and trying to redo everything all the time is necessarily the right idea either.
Right.
But ultimately, yeah, it just depends on the mindset at the time. That's why I'm still struggling to figure out if I'm gonna do that or not. So,
have you ever thought about, like, you mentioned briefly about that the cartoon that you did in CNP? Have you ever thought about picking that up again and just continuing it, or doing a different style with that, or making it like making CNP and source filmmaker in some way? Has that ever crossed your mind in that thought to move that into the future?
Yeah, I tried Source in the past, and it's quite a undertaking to learn that properly. When it comes to the cartoon, though, I'd have to redo a lot of the drawings. Legally, I don't think I can use the same drawings again, so this is by a different artist. So, but when it comes to like formats that the show could be made in, I've never been one to say that like it couldn't be made in a certain format. When we did a fan film contest in the past, there were people that did like Lego films or like 8-bit image kind of films, or even just like plushies in their bedroom sort of thing. And like I always think it's just creative to see different formats or different attempts at the same kind of formula. So I would never say never in terms of a certain format. For a cartoon, though, it does take a lot more dedication, I can tell you that much, because that whole 4-minute episode ended up taking about 5 months of production.
Jeez.
It was a long time.
And I always found, like, especially with a show that long, I always wondered if you ever thought of doing a season, like, I don't know how much you followed Rooster Teeth in their Red vs. Blue, but like right after their Halo 4 era, they did a season where like every single episode was in a different format. Have you ever thought...
Oh, really?
Pardon? Yeah, so they had
idea.
one that was completely...
I don't
it was
really
a complete
them, so.
animated form. There was one that was like a live action, and then they did a standard Machinima one. They did a different format in every episode. I always wondered how that would look in almost a CNP version of that, like having a Halo one, having a Gary's Mon, they each either being an enclosed story or a continuation in a weird way. I don't know if that's even in a wheelhouse, but I always find that concept and that idea rather interesting, especially when you stick to one format for so long, like Red versus Blue did.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was like...
No, I mean, I would definitely be open to doing other formats. It's just ultimately it comes down to, do we have the time and do we have the production output for that?
And also, what other formats
do we have the money, like monetary for that, you know?
No, 100%. And yeah, I don't know. That was kind of just like an offhand question that I was just thinking about, because of how many formats you've already done. I mean, you have made it into a cartoon. You've made it Gary's Mon.
Well, I would be down for doing an anime, like just as a
that would be interesting. How would
be funny? Live action would be interesting too.
I'm curious how you would run that, especially with how you do scripts with retro scripting and things. How that would format you differently, and how you would expand with that, especially with live action.
See, the thing is, for live action, and I had gotten this idea in the past where it's like, well, if I did live action, I should just do all the audio first that I want them to say. And then when the audio's done, like, here we go, here's our script. So rewrite all this audio, give it to the actors, and then have the actors that are portraying each character, like, memorize the inflections of the particular audio parts. And then when the production's over, like in terms of filming the live action actors, then you just either put all the audio that's already dubbed over the actors, or you redub the actors, like, lip for lip. So, because I think it'd be interesting to have it to where, like, it's the same voices, but it's like coming out of a live actor. Like, I always think that would be like a really nifty kind of concept.
So would you kind of do it
basically Darth Vader,
right? And so would you do like something like having them have a mask on, or a kind of like what, I don't know if you ever saw the CNP stuff for, not SCNP, the SCP stuff from there's so many abbreviations, I get them all mixed up at this point, but the SCP Overlord, I believe it was, from Evan Royalty, where all the voices were dubbed and they each had like almost a paintball mask over their face, and so they were able to basically have whatever voices they wanted for the characters. And so was cool. That kind of something that, is that where the wheelhouse you would go? They'd almost wear a mask, or would it be almost dubbed with their, in a different way? Just out of curiosity.
No, I would just dub it with their lips. Like,
oh wow, screen. Okay.
Because I mean, the thing is too is like the audio done beforehand and the actors hearing it. If the actor is like giving their own take on it or anything, ultimately after the fact, you could actually end up using that as to further enhance the project. With like, oh well, he did it with this kind of take, so if I'm gonna go back and redub him, I should try to go for more of that kind of take for it too. Or, I mean, I'm always interested in there's actually, when we've done body acting in the past, if somebody messes something up, or like two guys run a warthog into each other or something, I'm always the type of person where I'm like, that was unexpected, but that's going in the project now. So if I worked with real actors, I'd be the same sort of way.
Interesting. And yeah, that's kind of because I guess from my experience, it's just always, when I've worked with directors, it's always been very streamlined and very much like, this is what's going to happen, and if it doesn't happen that way, we have to restart the whole production. And so it's interesting that how you do it is going to be very adaptable in any sense of the situation.
Yeah, because I look at it as like a collaborative effort. You know, like the director can have their vision, and that's a great thing to go for, because obviously it's the director, like they have a certain way they want things done. But I feel like if you're a director, you also have to take in like to consideration like a collaborative effort of like the actors that you're working with. If they have a suggestion, or like they have a way that they feel like the character would give like a different descriptive dialogue, or wouldn't say a certain line in a certain way. A lot of directors end up having trouble with that kind of thing with actors, because like the director may see it one way, but the actor in some cases knows a lot better in terms of either a movie-going audience or television or whatever they're acting for.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm kind of want to shift gears here, because we've been talking about the live action stuff for a few minutes here, and I kind of want to talk about the Machinima.com situation, because I've heard kind of different things from like, or small snippets from either your live stream or friends that I know that you're friends with have had small snippets in that in situation. I'm curious, like, what how did you get involved with Machinima.com as a company, and how was the recovery process after the shutdown and really the harsh situation of kind of getting screwed over?
Yeah, so they were open for application. They were just taking people, like you could apply, and I had gotten a hold of one of their managers, affiliate managers, and before I even signed anything, I just explained to him like, hey, I got this show. It's going for quite a while now. You guys really don't have any shows, and I'd like to be able to do something with it, like to, make merchandise or do something to where I'm not like dirt poor. That'd be cool. And they were basically, oh yeah, we can do that for you. Yeah, we'll make merchandise and do this, and this will be great. Yeah, just sign this contract. And so gullibly, I signed the contract. And so as soon as I signed the contract, I was like, okay, cool, let's get this started. Guys, where'd you go? Guys. And phone calls, nothing. Twitter, nothing. Emails, nothing. I had reached a point where I had to go to their little website. They had like this little affiliate portal. And it was basically just, go through there and work with these YouTubers who make Minecraft videos and have 2 subscribers. Good luck.
Jeez.
And that's not what I was expecting when I signed the contract. So a couple years went by. The contract was to expire. And so I finally just was like, cool, that's it. Nobody wants to get a hold of me. I can't get a hold of anyone. They told me one thing, they did another, so the contract's over, right? Well, come May 2018, doing a whole 10th anniversary event for the CMP series, and I get to find out through the YouTube donations that they re-signed me without me knowing. They still had their stuff linked up to my YouTube. And so half the donations that I got on the Super Chat literally went to them, like automatically. And they just started siphoning money away from me.
How did they how did they take that?
I couldn't.
From you? How did they re-sign it without your consent on that?
I checked into it, and because I didn't get a hold of them directly, they could re-sign without my consent. And I'm sitting here like, are you serious? I tried every avenue to get a hold of you people. You people didn't want to get a hold of me. Signed me into this predatory contract telling me, we're going to give you the t-shirts and we're going to like put you on the page and all this and nothing. So straight up lied to me, re-signed me. I had my YouTube still linked up to them, and I hadn't even used YouTube in like a year at that point. From 2017, like 2016 to 2018, I kind of took a break off for about a year. So, and it was mainly because of the Machinima thing. I was just so, like, out of it after that. Like, damn, I pretty down bad being lied to by this giant corporation. And came back to it, and sure enough, they're still linked up. So, I couldn't get a hold of them through email. Couldn't get a phone number to call somebody. I finally just had to publicly, like, start getting on Twitter and dragging them through the mud. And it got to a point where June 1st, I get a message in my email finally, and they're like, our contract's going to be terminated now. Thank you so much. I'm just like, are you... The most corporate-ass email I've ever gotten in my life. For you people just completely ripping me off for the last 4 years. Thanks. So, that was it with them, and then about a year later, they turned into a dumpster fire and disappeared. So that was fun to see. And that's the story. So
how...
Worst mistake of my life was signing that contract.
And I don't think but it wasn't anybody's fault as far as the creator's side. Like, it's easy to look back in retrospect. I think. I mean, I wasn't involved in that situation, so I can't say for certain, but it seems like a lot of people were tricked into that situation. And
yeah, it's just large promises, and then you sign the contract like, they said this. And then it just...
So how did that shape the sense of your channel after that? After you're finally free from Machinima.com, was it more of a almost demoralizing section of that you didn't want to work, or were you able to pick that up just immediately after, in a way?
Well, when I initially thought I was out of the contract, I thought, maybe I should just take a break away from this for a while. I was in some pretty different life circumstances at the time outside of Machinima, so it was best to just kind of focus, like, my main focus and directive on other things without it for a while. And so that's why 2017 was just the year without CMP, pretty much. And when I came back to it in 2018, my motive was just to make the next best one. Got to make one that's funnier. It didn't feel right not making one, to be honest. After like a whole year. When something's such a constant in your life, and then you stop doing it for a whole year, it definitely starts to mess with you, where it's like, I gotta make this to feel good. If I'm not making this, that's poo-poo. And so when I came back to it and was making it, it was going great. And then to have to find that out and it wasn't even like woke up one day and got on the computer and found it out. Like, I mean, this was on like a live stream in front of all these people watching. Like, oh, great. I get to totally now be embarrassed that all these people have donated to half to me and half to this dumpster fire company. So it was not easy to live through at that point. And it was really interesting what ended up happening, though. I mean, a year later when they just deleted everybody's portfolio pretty much and went down. And my whole thing with that is I uploaded all my videos onto my channel. And so the irony is I thought that with signing with them, I'd be putting it on their channel. And then when they shut down, I just looked at it as like, oh, wow. So I just saved myself from losing the last 4 years of content, I guess. That's pretty great.
It's good.
Well, correction, 3 years. But yeah, because the contract was only for 3 years.
And 3 years is still a heck of a long time as far as the creative process goes. I mean, the amount that you've done in just, and like, if we look at how much you've done in just the past 2 years in Gmod, I mean, over the whole career of almost having 100 episodes of CNP, 3 years is a huge chunk of time.
Yeah. And I mean, for Halo, by the end of that process when I was using it, I was still like, I'd make like 5 in a year. And that's like 6 months of production. And I was just starting to slow down with those, to be honest, because it was just like, oh, here we go again with the Halo 3 music in the background. That main menu music, literally, it just gives me like this part of my brain just starts to like heat up. Like, it's anytime I hear that music, because after 10 years of, oh no, it's the music again, no.
No Halo 3.
It's like a PTSD for the main menu music.
So no Halo 3 machinimas or speed running anytime soon.
Definitely not speedrunning, but as I said, next year there might end up being one.
So you'll go through the PTSD for that.
It says a 15th anniversary thing. Yes, I'll do it for the fans.
And well, on the subject of speedrunning, as a great segue into that I created, but I just want, like, coinciding with your machinima making, tell me about how you kind of came into the speedrunning as a genre and really working on getting faster runtimes in games like Doom, because it's something completely it's something I didn't know about you for the longest time, because I wasn't paying attention to that aspect. But then once I saw that you did, it's a very interesting side of you, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I'd known about speedrunning for it was about like 2013 or 14 when I'd first heard about it. And when I first was introduced to like Ocarina of Time and Super Mario 64 and a lot of these really well-known speedruns, I just said to myself, I could never do that. And that's the biggest thing that I tell people to never tell themselves if they want to start speedrunning, because telling yourself that is not even giving it a chance to see if you can do it. And when it was 2017, the year without CMP, once again, it was about August or September of that year, and I needed like a new hobby. I needed something to just take up some time on a Saturday night, and I started looking at speedrunning again and said, well, maybe I can try that, but I don't think I'm going to do Super Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time. I should try to do something different that I know well enough. And I looked at Soul Calibur 2. I was a big fan of that game, and I started playing that. And 3 days after starting that game, I set the world record for like the fastest run in the arcade mode. And I couldn't believe it. I was floored that I was able to get like such a good time right out of the gate. And it just inspired me to start looking through all of my other games. I sat down and played Centipede, and got a time in that, and original Pac-Man, like the arcade version. I got a pretty good time in that. I actually had a world record in that game at one point for the fastest life. It was like 42 seconds and some milliseconds, which that's not even a good time anymore. It's like top 10. There's other people that got better 42s than me. But it got to a point where I was looking through all these old games and I came across Doom. And I've been playing Doom for, a really long time now. Probably about 16, 17 years at this point. Oh gosh, no, actually next year it'll be 20 years. My mistake. Holy crap. Sorry, I'm having existential crisis in the middle of my answer here. But yeah, so I looked at Doom and I thought, that's really cool. But the only version Doom I had growing up was Doom for Game Boy. And then I had Doom on Xbox 360. And I noticed that the Xbox 360 version didn't have its own speedrun leaderboard. They were just taking the submission with that for like the other, just the standard PC version. And so I was like, that's not right, because you can't get nearly as good times like you can on PC. And in my experience of playing that and playing Doom for Game Boy, I ended up starting to play Doom 32X, Doom on the Atari, Doom on 3DO. And before I knew it, I just became like this source of Doom speedrunning on all these really weird and obscure ports. And now here we are today, like 5 years later, and we started up a whole community for it. There's just tons of people that are running all these different versions of Doom and finding all of these random bugs and glitches. And the Doom Unity ports leaderboard is the largest Doom leaderboard on speedrun.com now. And me and a bunch of buddies started that back in 2019, and they've got over 6,000 runs submitted now. So it's a really crazy time, just all those years ago being like, oh, I don't think I can do it, to now I can definitely do it. You just gotta practice, because practice makes perfect.
Yeah, and this is kind of just a side comment almost. The Halo Machinima wiki online has listed that you have been achieved over 200 world record speedruns. I just wanted to see, is that accurate?
Yeah, one time.
So do you know how many you're at?
Yeah, one time I did have
200.
I think right now I've got over 100, but it's not 200 anymore.
That's insane.
Because in my lifetime, I've set like times that aren't world records anymore. If you include those, I've set probably over 300 at this point. So
that's incredible.
Quite a bit. Because like there's a lot of games that I run where there's only like 5 or 6 people that have ran it, but there's a few of them that have had quite a few people putting in the time. Like the Pac-Man, people played that for like 40 years, so I was pretty surprised with that.
Which speedrun stands out the most to you?
Yeah, for Doom though, I did a run of Doom for Game Boy, and it doesn't use this glitch that's known today. This new glitch was found in like 2021 that ends up making the run super easy. The record right now is a 7:58, but before that glitch was discovered, to play a game under 9 minutes, it literally took me like 14,000 resets over 3 years of just resetting the game over and over. And I played one game that was under 9 minutes without that glitch. And it literally was under 9 minutes by a single frame. It was 8:59.97. And so I feel like that's the run that stands out to me, because it's just, I literally had to reset it for 3 years just to get a single run that was under 9 minutes.
That's wild.
It was a crazy, stupid run. And the fact that a new glitch got figured out that completely destroys that time just makes me laugh about it now. But
and so what were you mentioning about Doom before?
There was also a Soul Calibur run I did.
I think I'm trying to help you get back to your point.
I was going to say there was
No, keep talking. I'm curious about your...
No, this other run that stands out to me, and it stands out for the dumbest reason too. It's so there's a strategy I figured out in Soul Calibur 1 that nobody had figured out before, where you play as Yoshimitsu. He's one of the samurai characters, and there's this move you can do as him where he stabs himself, and it takes like most of your health bar away. But if the other player is standing right behind you when you stab yourself, it's an insta kill. So if you do that 8 times in a row, you get the world record. And I had started like this run of the game that I thought was going pretty bad like halfway through. And so I was like, this sucks. And my cat was freaking out in the background because my cat wanted to eat. So I paused the game and I went and I fed my cat, and then I came back. And then I continued the run just like, oh, this is a throwaway run. This run's not going to be good. And it ended up being like the first game ever in under 30 seconds with the pause to feed the cat and everything. I literally was like, I set the world record and I fed my cat in the middle of the run. Like, I can't even believe this. I'm never gonna get this again. And it's got the cat feeding, so that run really stands out to me just because it's
I mean, I think it should.
It's fun to sit there for weeks trying to go for that time. So
I feel like that would make anybody else trying to get that run done kind of feel demoralized a bit, that you went and fed your cat and you still got the world record. You had to handicap yourself.
Well, well, luckily somebody did beat that time, so it's I think it might be second place right now. I don't remember if it might be third now. Let me check. Let's find out.
Let's find out live on the podcast.
Yes, we're finding out live.
Even though people won't
second place.
Won't listen to this for a couple weeks.
They'll be like, "Oh, you had to go and search."
Believe it or not, we don't have everything memorized at the top of our head.
No, yeah, speedrunning is definitely one of the best hobbies I've picked up in quite some time.
It's awesome, man. And I to alleviate off of and kind of wrap this thing up together, I've asked the past couple guests this, and it's more just a curiosity at this point. As you've transitioned from Halo and now in Gary's mod, and being able to kind of overlook everything, where do you see machinima as a genre kind of going from here, if anywhere?
A lot of people tend to say that like machinima had a golden age and like not a lot of people watch it anymore or anything like that, but I look at it as it is the best time in history to make machinima right now, because there's so many different tools and options and tutorials and just freely available information to be able to make machinima, compared to like 2008 especially. When I was first starting out, there was definitely not a whole motive of resources or direct communication of techniques to make machinima at a higher grade than just starting out and trial and error for yourself. When it comes to depending on what you're going to use, though, that's where it can get difficult in trying to figure out, like, okay, if I'm going to use Halo, do I just use the base game, or do I try to like add in some mods or change some byte tags in the mod editor, or like what am I trying to do, or what am I trying to accomplish? Or Grand Theft Auto, prime example, that has a pretty interesting learning curve for a couple of different things, and the filmmaker for that, even just using Source Filmmaker, that can take many of years to learn many of different things with. But ultimately, I feel like today is the best time to make machinima for anybody who just wants to start out, or anybody who's going for 14 years like me.
And what do you think of the notion, because there was a big thing about it like 6 years ago, about the concept of machinima being dead, because the views were down, you're not going to get the most subscribers most of the cases with that. Do you take the notion that it's not really dead, it's just kind of in its niche kind of area almost at this point?
See, I think the concept of machinima that those people think of is the machinima of like prior day, because I see a lot of videos today where it can constitute as machinima if you really think about it. There's this YouTuber, they use Mario 64 characters, and it might be like heavily edited, but it's still technically a machinima if they're using in-game engine to produce their characters. So I feel like the people who say it's just straight up dead are looking at like the older concept of it, like especially in the Halo sense. I mean, a lot of people unfortunately have dwelled away from Halo quite a bit in the recent years, but there's still really good Halo machinimas out there. I mean, you were just talking about Grumpy. Grumpy still makes some pretty good stuff, and there's actually another series that's gone for quite a while that's still getting people watching. It's I hope I'm saying this correctly, but it's Mundo Mondoya. It's like
it's been going on forever.
Gosh, I'm trying to remember what country that guy's from, but I've talked to him in the past. Yeah, there's plenty of productions that still to this day I feel like are making great strides and making good content. And for anybody who says that Machinima's dead, there was definitely a different age of Machinima that may have done better, like at that age. But there's still plenty of Machinima that's being made that people are watching. So I've never wanted to say, like, it's dead. But I would definitely say there was a golden age to Machinima that I feel like we have passed at this point.
100%. And this is kind of just a fun question to kind of end us off here and not be so down on a Machinima topic. But is there any kind of questions that you... What?
I was gonna say, wow, how depressing.
Yeah, that's the end. Let's most depressing thing anyone's heard all week, right?
The golden age is over. Get over it.
The fall of Machinima ends today.
Oh no!
It's time to restart, rebuild. We have the technology. But realistically, I just kind of want to know, is there any questions that you wish someone would have asked you? I mean, like, you've had live streams before. I don't know if you've been on a podcast before, but you've been on this podcast now. And is there any questions you wish someone would ask you, or you kind of like a part of your production where you're like, you wish someone would have kind of noticed that part?
You know, that's a really good question.
the question about asking a question?
No, imagine if I was like, oh, that's the question I want someone to ask.
Well, I'm asking you now, so answer. No.
Well, I guess the question I would want people to ask is why does Do have to be an elite? Because the thing is like I said prior to in the podcast, I wouldn't use Halo 4 because he couldn't be an elite. And my whole thing behind that is the fact that he's got this squeaky voice, he's kind of childlike in the way he's portrayed, but he's this really giant character. And so I've always looked at it as a visual humor kind of standpoint where it's like, yeah, this giant character, and he's getting beat up by this guy who's like 3 feet under him. It's just kind of like a visual humor to it that I think really adds to the character too, how he's just like really giant and yet he's completely just pathetic. So that's what I would think for a question for somebody to ask, like, oh, why does he have to be an elite? Like, because it's good for the humor. If he was just another Spartan the same size, it would just be like, oh, well, yeah, he's the same height as that dude, so who cares? Oh, what, he's getting beat up by that guy and he's like 3 times his size? What a scrub.
I mean, there's always...
So, I feel like it definitely adds to the 100%.
Have you ever thought about using, like, the mod to make a... Like, because you can always use a mod to make the character bigger. Do you think it adds something just differently, him being an elite?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, in Halo Reach.
Right, and so do you think
actually.
It's just... Yeah. It's something more than just the size, but the fact of him being an elite with the squeaky voice that adds something to it?
Yeah, I guess you could say that too, because you expect to see the elite, and it's all like really deep, and the voice modulation or backwards speaking, or the Sangheili language. So I think that really does add to it too. Is just you got this alien, and he's super high pitched, like what? That should not be coming out of that. Why does it work? Why does it happen? Because I
think your production is one of the few that actually it would work with that, but it is interesting that every Machinima that's come out, it's always deep voice. Every single time. And then if you ever just go a little bit outside of the standard Machinima and go to CNP, it's just high-pitched voice, and it can throw you for a loop if you're going like between like someone's very serious war Machinima and then jumping over to CNP.
Yeah, and that's I've always wanted to make one where it was like super serious, like a war kind of video. And then I thought about it, and I was just like, there's already a lot of that, and I don't think people would take too kindly with like me trying to like make a parody out of that. So it was instantly like something that I just decided it wasn't a good idea to do. But yeah, there's a couple of ideas like that where it'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds great, let's get it started, and then halfway through the production it's like, oh, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Never mind. Quite a few that have happened like that.
Do you think you'll ever like branch out a CNP for like a one-off or something of something completely different, like in the near future, or into like, because I know you're
yeah. I'm actually I'm actually writing another show right now, but when it comes to the actual budget for it and the approval for all the copyright and everything, it'll probably never get made. But I am looking into sending that over to the correct people here in due time to try and see if that could possibly get made.
That's awesome, man. And kind of gonna wrap things up here because we're getting close to that time limit, and I just kind of want to say I appreciate you jumping on this podcast with me, and I'm really looking forward to kind of how you evolve CNP, and like maybe if we ever see that hidden script that in that series that you're able to get the copyright through. But yeah, man. Oh, definitely.
No, I appreciate it, Quad. This has been awesome. It's been a good time reminiscing over the 14 years, half my
your
life. And we're just going to keep it going. That is the
It's going to get to a point where you're just going to be like 2/3 of my life. It's going to overlap.
Yeah, we've already made it for over 5,000 days, so we're going for 5,000 more. That's the goal.
Man, a lot of us are going to be out and retired, and you're just going to keep going. We're heading for that 60th anniversary, right?
80 years old. You guys want to do CP? We got our new voice actors since I talk through this little box on my throat now.
I finally
It's going to be great. Season 40, season 29. Be there.
I'll save the date in my calendar. I'll text you on that day, and we'll see if you're still making it.
I'm gonna hold you to it. It's gonna be 30 years from now. I'll be like, "Hey, Quad,
send me like a burner phone number or something of yours, so I can actually like just call you on the day. I'll be 80 years old, shaking and like having."
Be like Walter White. I'm gonna hold you. I'll be like, "Jesse, we need to make C&P.
I don't have much of a budget, but here's $10. Just make it."
It's perfect. This VCR I've got, we can tape it together with these sticks. It'll be a C&P episode. It'll be great.
All right, man. Well, again, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I had a pleasure talking with you. It's been great. And yeah, hope you...
Oh, you're very welcome.
Of course.
Thanks for having me.
Hope we get to sit down and talk a little bit in the sooner. Maybe after you finish this year's season, or maybe next year we can kind of reminisce it again and kind of...
Yeah, talk to me in 2023, because there's going to be quite a bit coming out.
We're looking forward to it.
Sure.